Welcome to the Beat Reporter's Inbox on MLB.com, presented by Edward Jones. I'm Rhett Bollinger, MLB.com Twins reporter, with Andrew asking the questions. Andrew, what do we have first?
First up comes from Danny. What's the mood like after the sweep by the Rays?
Well, it's never good to get swept. Like coming off that series there in Puerto Rico, Twins won, one of the two games there, including a fun one with Jose Barrios pitching well and Eddie Rosario scoring the winning run there in 16 innings. Coming to that series in Tampa, and the pitching just wasn't there. The bullpen really struggled. Just was not a fun series for the Twins. Gave up a lot of runs. Not a good sign coming into this tough series against the Yankees. You know that in New York, the Twins have had a lot of trouble in the past, and now they've got a big 4-game series here in New York to kind of pick up the pieces after that series. Same time, the Twins, they're not too down. They know it's a long season. You're going to get swept sometimes. It just kind of happens. But the Rays are a team that's kind of rebuilding a little bit, and so to get swept like that definitely is not a good sign for a team trying to compete. But like I said, it's still early, but it's going to be a tough series here in New York now as a result.
Next one comes from Wanda. When do you expect Buxton to be back? Well,
the good news is Buxton was able to go on the field there and kind of do some running. I know last week placed on the DL with migraines while he was in Puerto Rico. He flew to Puerto Rico. Everything was fine. On the day of the game on that Tuesday, just the migraines are really bothering him really bad to the point where he came to the ballpark but wasn't feeling right. They had to send him back to the hotel. Ended up staying at the hotel for a couple of days there, not even coming to the ballpark. But the good news is they kind of subsided a little bit. I wouldn't say he's 100% yet here, but I think that there's a good chance we could see him by Wednesday or Thursday once he's eligible to return from that 10-day DL. But it's something that's plagued him in the past, and I think that it could be something that we could see plague him in the future as well.
Rob wants to know, should we be concerned with the lack of production from Logan Morrison?
It's been one of the big surprises just how much of a struggle it's been offensively for Logan Morrison. Last year, had a great year with the Rays, hit 38 home runs, had a huge first half, too, on top of it. And this year just has not got it going at all, really. I think he only has like 3 to 5 hits the entire season. Just not really hitting for much power. Did hit his first home run, which is a good sign in Tampa. Maybe that'll get him going a little bit. But coming into the Tampa series, I believe he had 3 hits the entire season, including just 1 double. And the Twins brought him in spring training to kind of be that middle of the bat type of, middle of the order type of bat to kind of produce some offense there. It just hasn't happened. But I think based on their track record, the Twins are definitely, they believe that he's going to kind of get it going here soon. But for the offense to fully click, he's got to be a big part of it, and so far it just hasn't happened.
Next question comes from Doug. Is it time to move Sano in the batting order?
Well, with Sano right now, the big thing is always going to be the strikeouts. And right now, the strikeout rate is through the roof, and it's almost 1 out of every 2 at-bats. But we know that his power is legit. We know that he hits the ball harder than anybody on the team. I think he's really, if you look at kind of exit velocity, which is one of the big stats we have here, with StatCast, he's in the top 5 in all of baseball in terms of average exit velocity. The balls that he hit are crushed whenever he makes contact. A lot of home runs and doubles and just power in general. But the walk rate's definitely dropped over the last year or so. So I think for him to kind of get it going, he's going to need to draw some more walks, avoid some of these strikeouts. He's always going to strike out a decent amount as a slugger and a guy that just, swings and misses a lot. But at this point right now, the rate's too high. So as for the batting order, I don't see it really happening in that sense. I think they like having, Dozier, Mauer, Sano being their big power guy hitting third. But he does have to cut down on the strikeouts because right now they're at too high of a rate.
Andy asks, will Joe Mauer be a Twin after the season?
It's a great question. Joe Mauer's off to a great start this year. Last year had a great season and one of his best season probably since his kind of career-altering concussion that he suffered in 2013. Hitting for average, getting on base. Just having a great year. He had a nice moment getting his 2000th hit at home last home series, which was fun to see. He's a big leader in that clubhouse and a guy that's been around for a long time. This is, all he's known as a Twins. He's a local guy from St. Paul. So at this point, if I had to guess, I would think that he would be back, but it's still too early to know for sure. The Twins have said they're not going to talk about extensions until after the season, so I don't think it's something that's going to happen during the season. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Twins decided to extend him for a year or two, just based on the fact that he's had such great years back-to-back so far, and the fact they don't really have a big first baseman in their minor league system right now. They could obviously move Miguel Sano to first base, but I think they like Sano enough at third base so they can keep him there for the next couple of years and maybe bring back Mauer on a 1 or 2 year deal.
Up next comes from Ty. What does the bullpen help in the minors look like? Anyone ready to come up?
Well, they've kind of tapped into it a little bit, bringing up Alan Busenitz. Gabriel Moy had a tough go, and he got sent down when they brought up Phil Hughes. They do have some intriguing arms down there, but it's mostly in starting pitching. Tyler Duffy is having a great start to the year at AAA, and he has some bullpen experience. So I think Duffy could be a guy that could be called up. In spring training, Jake Reed was a guy that's a non-roster guy who had a great spring training. Might be a name to kind of look out for as well. But it's mostly in the starting pitching at AAA with Alberto Mejia. Fernando Ramiro's off to a great start. You have Steven Gonsalves at AA. So it's not as many guys in there in terms of the bullpen help that they have in the rotation. But I do think a guy like maybe Duffy could be brought up kind of as a multi-inning reliever just because he's off to such a good start here. But at the same time, they got to figure out their rotation situation with Hughes, who was only average in his return yesterday in Tampa Bay.
Frank wants to know, how is Bryce Lewis doing so far in the minors?
He's had a nice start. I mean, the big thing was he had a 4-hit game the other day, raised his average quite a bit. The Twins love him. His makeup, his ability to hit for average, power, his speed, his defense at shortstop. It's something they believe he can stick there. If not, I think he can still be a capable center fielder because he's so athletic with his speed. But number one overall pick last year for a reason. Just one of their favorite guys in all the minors, and a guy that could move pretty quickly. He's already down there at low A and could continue to move up from there and could even finish up the year at high A, which for being only 19 this season is very impressive.
John asks, how can Fernando Rodney improve the rest of the way?
It's a good question. I mean, last year, Fernando Rodney had a rough start in April. I believe his ERA was close to 9 with the Diamondbacks. I think a lot of fans in Arizona thought, the same thing. What can we do to get him going, or we need to move him away from closing? Sure enough, Rodney found it, was great the rest of the 5 months, finished with, I believe, 38 saves, and ended up, pitching the Diamondbacks into a postseason, role as well, being their closer into the postseason. So at the same time, he's obviously a guy who's up there in age, in his 40s, so you never know. But the velocity so far is still there. But he's had a rough go. I mean, not being able to convert some saves, gave up a game-winning home run as well when the game was tied earlier this season. But that's kind of how Fernando Rodney is. He's going to be a guy who's going to get guys on base and walk some guys, but usually finds his way out of jams. It just hasn't really happened to that extent so far. But I do think it's kind of similar to last year where slow start. I don't think he particularly likes pitching in the cold in April. So I think the hope is once the weather kind of warms up that he'll start pitching better as well.
Up next is Anna, who wants to know, does Dozier have the best hair in the clubhouse?
I think it's hard to say anybody else, although the wild card is Ryan Lamar, the extra outfielder they brought up this year. He's also got nice flow as well. But I would say Brian's always been the guy that has the best hair in the clubhouse with that kind of that flow he likes, his Mississippi flow, I guess you could call it.
Braxton asks, how is Lance Lynn looking?
Lynn, so far, it hasn't been too great. I think he's the first to admit that he thought he pitched better so far. It was kind of a rough situation. He took so long to sign. Didn't sign until the middle of spring training. Only got a couple outings down there. His first outing of the year gives up 5 runs in the very first inning, including a grand slam. Kind of settled down from there a little bit, but then had a long layoff because they had so many rainouts and snowouts, really. And then they wanted to get Jose Barrios into that Puerto Rican game, so they bounced him back a little bit even further. So pitched with a long layoff against the Rays and struggled a little bit again. So I think the same thing with him is the track record is there, kind of like Morrison. I think the hope is once he kind of pitches every 5 days, once the weather gets better, that we'll see the version of Lance Lynn we've seen with the Cardinals all those years, a guy with a great career ERA and had a great ERA last year as well. So, but definitely a kind of a rough one to see guys like, and 2 guys they added in spring training to be big additions to this team on 1-year deals have a rough start so far.
Up next is Michael. If Escobar keeps playing by well, what happens with him when Polanco's come back?
It'll be interesting to see. At this point, it's still kind of far away that you don't really know for sure. Things can happen, injuries, that kind of thing. But I do think that it's Polanco's job at shortstop. He entered the year as a starter. But Escobar's done a great job as a fill-in, just like last year, filling in for Miguel Sano at third base. Escobar's a very, very valuable player for this team. He's a guy that can play multiple positions. He's got surprising power. Last year I think he hit 21 home runs for kind of a little infielder. It's pretty impressive. So, and defensively he can kind of hang in there at third and short. But I do think that Polanco, once he returns, he's still the starting shortstop. But even down the stretch, it'll be interesting to watch because Polanco will not be eligible for the postseason if the Twins are going to be eligible again for this. For a second straight season to make it to the playoffs. He will not be eligible at all for the postseason. So they're going to have to kind of figure that out. But I do think that once he returns, he'll probably replace Escobar. But like I said, things can change. That's going to be a little bit here in the future. George
wants to know, what are your season projections for Sano and Buxton?
Well, both have to cut down on their strikeouts, that's for sure. I do think that Sano is a guy that, if he stays healthy, can certainly hit more than 30 home runs. and drive in a ton of runs as well. But he's got to cut down on the strikeouts to hit for a higher average, or else he's going to have to hit 230, 240, unless he can put the ball in play more. And Buxton, I still think he can have a breakout year. Last year had a great second half. This year you've seen show some flashes a little bit, but hasn't had a particularly productive first start here to the season. But also dealt with the migraines right now, is on the DL. But I could see Buxton still northward of 40, 50 bases to go along with his amazing defense, obviously, in center field. And if he can even hit 270, 280, it would be a big boon for this offense, and a guy that can kind of get it going with just his speed and ability to impact the game in so many ways. He's definitely those two guys are kind of the big part of their core going forward, and they need big seasons from them if they're going to repeat and make it to the postseason for a second straight year. Well, thanks for watching the Beat Reporters Inbox at MLB.com, presented by Edward Jones. Tune in again next time.